Good evening, you're watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. We all know that Donald Trump isn't your average American president, to put it politely. He's different, more brash than what the world is used to. But there is one relationship many think is surviving this new presidency rather well, the one with India. But there is an irritant that has cropped up, and the president's own personality, which is causing a dent in ties. The US president has strongly criticized India again for its high import duties on motorbikes. He went a step further and softly mimicked the Prime Minister's accent as well, which, by the way, the Washington Post says he's done before in private meetings. In fact, not just bikes, the US president is also unhappy about higher tariffs on many other items like phones and cars. American companies like Apple are unhappy because they make their iPhones and they want to sell them in India, and now they've become more expensive. Car companies too are unhappy all over the world, and they've expressed that unhappiness openly. This protectionism is being seen as the opposite of what the Prime Minister talked about in Davos at the World Economic Forum last month. But are these serious cracks in the US-India relationship? That's what we're going to talk about in our big focus tonight. Ambassador K.C. Singh on the program with us tonight. Also with us, Sameer Saran, Vice President of the Observer Research Foundation. We have Amy Kasman, correspondent with the Financial Times. Also Ejaz Ilmi, leader of the BJP. Ambassador K.C. Singh, to you first. How much of a problem is this? Or on two fronts. One, the criticism that Donald Trump has made. How much of an irritant is this turning out to be in India-US ties? And just, you know, the way he kind of takes off on the Indian Prime Minister as well, softly mimicking his accent. What is this telling you?
Well, second is just probably Trump being Trump. But I think the first thing has always been there. The Americans, since I remember in 1980, I used to be Consul Commerce in New York. We were always having a problem, either sending a textiles into America or they'll be complaining about duties here. But post the World Trade Organization, the problem is that Trump, who's complaining, is actually the anti-globalization leader. He's the one who's putting the shutters down. Now, how can he be demanding from other countries treatment which you are not willing to mete out? And you just see what they've done to the H-1B visas. Despite apparently assurances which Indian government said they had obtained, he's gone and tightened it. And he'll go on tightening. So he's got his own agenda, he'll go on that. But actually the motorcycle thing, as I tweeted, is really ridiculous because India exports $1 billion worth of motorcycles and only $11 million worth go to US. So if he wants to raise the duty, by all means let him do it. It's not going to affect it. Now basically the trade deficit is in goods, about $20 billion odd dollars, say 70-40 is how it is. But in the services sector, it's almost 20 billion here and 20 billion there. Difference is only $2 billion. But then what he's forgetting is, what about the arms they're selling to us? There are billions and billions dollars worth of planes and other equipment that we are buying from them. So you can't single out just a few goods which may be having a certain agenda.
Can I ask you one thing?
In the case of Reagan, it used to be almonds from California.
No. Can I ask you one thing though quickly, which is that, you know, you're saying that's Trump being Trump when he's sort of mimicking the Prime Minister. So do you think world leaders and countries have just kind of come to terms with this is how, about how he's going to be, that this is who he is, that he's going to be rude sometimes, and that we just have to deal with it?
You know the fun he made of the British Prime Minister. He in fact went and tweeted and spoke against her on Brexit. Then there's fun he made of Merkel on her admitting immigrants into our country. So other leaders have ignored it. I think this is par for the course. They realize that this is Trump. But the danger is when you get extra chummy, extra, huggy with him to give an impression in India that you are on first name terms and so on and so forth. I think it's best to have a good formal relationship with him, humor him as Trudeau, whom we have treated rather badly here, humored him when he went to Washington. So there is a way of dealing with him. There's a way of dealing with his family. But don't get over chummy because that's not going to work where he's not happy on a particular issue.
I love this new word you've invented though, the word huggy. I think it should be in the dictionary. It's really funny. So, Sameer Saran, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the huggy part first. Should we be bothered by this kind of slight? It's not a kind of slight. I mean, honestly, I thought it was really disrespectful to the Prime Minister to talk about him like that publicly, even privately, but publicly more so, knowing full well this could go out there.
I think it would be disrespectful if a person who is not known to do this would have done this. I think coming from Trump, it is not disrespectful. I think Trump is basically a caricature of himself in many of these forums. And he was actually addressing a local base. It was clear he was speaking to a representative of the motorcycle company, and he was, in a sense, explaining that he is working for them, working for the benefits of American industry. On the huggy part, I absolutely agree with Ambassador Casey Singh. I think if we are smart, he's a very low maintenance partner to have. I think it's very easy to manage Trump. Trump is unlike Obama, who would preach to you on your soil on how you should behave with your citizens, with your minorities, with your energy policy, with your trade policy, with
Trump is only interested in business.
Trump is interested in trade, and Trump is interested in his narcissist space. And I think if you could give a bit of both to him, it's a low maintenance relationship. On the part on which Ambassador Casey Singh mentioned on protectionism, I would add to what Ambassador said. Of course, it has to be reciprocity, and Trump is no paragon of trade today. But having said that, I think it is important for India to internalize that it stands to gain the most from an open and liberal trading system, and perhaps it is India's turn to put some life and energy into preserving that open trading system. So while I agree that the Americans cannot expect a degree of openness when they are closing all sorts of walls and creating all sorts of walls.
But that India needs to think about.
But India needs to think of its own best interest, and this is the time for us to actually say we are perhaps the best place to do business in. And India should actually be stepping on the accelerator in terms of opening its trading regime.
But we're doing the opposite.
Lowering duties. We're doing the opposite. I agree, and I don't think it's sensible.
So, Amy Kasman, let's talk about that. I mean, what kind of impression goes out then about India's seriousness in doing business with the world, attracting investment, when the Prime Minister gives a pretty good speech that was well received at the World Economic Forum, and he talks about protectionism but in the opposite way, and then the budget comes and then you have all these duties that are imposed. So what is the message that's going out to the rest of the world?
Well, I do think that a lot of foreign businesses will be very frustrated with what has happened. I mean, as you said, Modi went out there at Davos. He talked about the necessity of preserving the open trading system. India, in the last 20 years, has been moving steadily in the direction of reducing its import tariffs and integrating more with the global economy. And suddenly in this budget, you have this list of about 50 items on which customs duties are going up sharply. And it's interesting, you see now a lot of companies announcing that they're rethinking their plans. You have, like, say, television manufacturers who have said, okay, that are assembling televisions here, flat screen TVs, and now suddenly the customs duty on one particular part has been, you know, raised, and now you have these guys saying, well, actually, if we do the math, it might end up being cheaper for us. You know, why are we even assembling here in the first place? Let's just think about importing the whole thing. So, I mean, these ideas of trying to attract investment are often worked out on, you know, kind of formulas of predictability, you know, this price, this cost, okay, we can bring this part in at this price. And then, I mean, if you want to, I mean, if your game is that you want to increase, which I know that this government is committed, that they're committed to increasing manufacturing investment here, if you think you're going to accomplish that by raising tariffs, I'm afraid that might not really quite work out. At the end of the day, the core issues that make India not so competitive or attractive as a manufacturing destination, for manufacturing, really have to be addressed and kind of.
But as you said, it's frustrating international businesses, and let me ask Ajaz about that. Swaminathan Iyer actually wrote, and I'm borrowing this comment from him, that India is instinctively protectionist. Is that what it is? Which is why no matter how much we say we're not, we're doing the opposite.
Well, if you look at the course of the last 2 decades, what is the average import tariffs? They've come down from 19.9% to 13.4%. So we are definitely on a lower trajectory. But given the situation, I mean, Trump can talk about America first and have his own agendas. And let me put it on record that as an individual, what he said was unacceptable, brash and crass. But law of world leader,
you felt it was brash and crass.
Absolutely. You can't. I mean, you can't talk like that. But I guess he's the only one who can talk like that at the global stage, and not only with India, with the Prime Minister Modi. He said it about a lot of other leaders, and a lot of leaders have devised their own mechanisms to deal with him. I think India also will ultimately, I mean, has been dealing with him and will continue to deal with him. He's the US president.
Well, it's probably smart that the MEA didn't choose to say anything.
Being sanctimonious and parsimonious in an undignified manner is something that would not come easily to most presidents and prime ministers in the International Committee of Nations. Secondly, on issues of trade, there is a situation where we need to also protect our own industry. We have our own manufacturing sector to take care of. And yes, there are times when the import tariffs are lowered, but there are times when there's a little slowdown in the economy, as in the case of India. So we have to build in measures that we have a capacity that has to be utilized, and we cannot, we have to give some sense of people who have put in the money, Indian citizens, multinationals, to put a manufacturing bases out here. So they must get the best value for their effort, and it's a large employment base. So these things have to be worked out.
Let me just take what
in some of this, they're saying that, you know, they've put in the capacity here, and then they have to import one component, and the sudden sharp rise in customs tariffs upsets the whole math and calculations on which they've made.
But
these
I think the point here is
how
how is this affecting the India-US relationship? Because this has been an irritant for some time, Samir Saran, and where do you see this going? Because this is the one issue on which there seems to actually be friction.
No, I think we are making this a little more than it actually is. I think this was a conversation.
That's what TV does.
That's what TV does. So this is Donald Trump speaking to his base. This is Donald Trump trying to tell the Harley Davidson executive that I am working for you and I'm trying to promote your interests. I think this was a simple conversation which in a global world is available to everyone to interpret and analyze. But let's be very clear, the India-America difference on economic policy issues that India has retained over the last multiple decades will remain. But we have also shown that that does not have a veto over the breadth and depth of a relationship on other fronts. I think what we in India need to actually reach a consensus on is that protectionism should not be a default mode. That we now need to understand that we have a 10 to 15-year window when some are tiring, some are flailing, to actually capture new economic space, and we have to do that being aggressive. We have to do that by being more inviting. We need regulatory certainty, and we need political clarity. Over the last 1.5 years, we have seen none of it.